This billionaire believed that money could buy everything: love, loyalty, even life itself. So when his lover became pregnant, he turned his back on her and the unborn child. But years later, fate has a cruel sense of justice. His very survival now rests in the hands of the same daughter he once rejected. Will she forgive him, or let him face the pain he caused? Sit back and find out as we unfold this deeply emotional story. In the heart of Lagos, there lived a man named Stephen, one of the wealthiest men in the land. He owned vast construction empires, one in Lagos, another in Abuja. His life was wrapped in luxury: sleek cars, towering mansions with high fences, and dinners with the most powerful people in society. But behind all that glitter was a heart hardened by pride. Stephen was arrogant, a man who believed that money could replace everything: respect, friendship, even family. Often he would stand before his mirror, smile proudly, and say to himself, "What is family when I have wealth? What is love when I have power?" He truly believed he needed no one, that nothing in this world could humble him. But as the elders say, no matter how high the bird flies, one day it must come down to drink water. Many years earlier, Stephen had met a young village woman. She was simple and kind. But when she became pregnant for him, Stephen looked down on her. "She is not good enough to be part of my wealthy life," he said coldly. And so he abandoned her. He turned his back on her and the unborn child. He walked away smiling, thinking he was free. He believed he had escaped responsibility. But what Stephen did not know was that the very life he was so proud of, the breath in his body, the beating of his heart, one day would depend on that same unborn child he had abandoned. The lady Stephen had abandoned with pregnancy was a beautiful young lady named Grace. She was 19 years old and still lived with her parents. Grace was their only child. From the day she was born, everyone in the village knew she was special. Her father was a great man in the land, respected by the elders and the youth. Her mother was a humble woman, kind to everyone, and full of wisdom. Because of her strong family religious values, Grace grew up in discipline, in love, and in the fear of. She was not only beautiful on the outside, her beauty was also inside. She respected everyone, both young and old. Wherever she went in the village, people would smile and say, "This girl is blessed. She is a light to her family." Her parents often called her a gift from heaven. They loved her dearly and always reminded her of who she was. Her mother always advised her, "My daughter, never allow any man to deceive you. Keep your purity. Walk with God and you will never bring shame to this family." Grace smiled softly and replied, "Yes, mother. I promise I will never bring shame to you or to the God we serve." And truly, Grace carried herself with grace, just like her name. She was gentle, calm, and humble. Her life was an example for the whole community. But the elders say, the brighter the light, the stronger the shadow that tries to cover it. Grace's beauty and innocence began to draw attention, not only from those who admired her goodness, but also from men who carried dangerous desires in their hearts. And this is how a painful encounter between Grace and a billionaire started. Many years ago, Stephen received a royal contract from a powerful king. He was chosen to build a grand mansion for the king's only son, the prince. Stephen arrived with his workers, and within days the sound of hammers and shovels filled the land as the work began under the hot village sun. One quiet morning, while the workers labored at the site, Stephen decided to take a drive around the village. He wanted to see the land and watch the people. As his car rolled down the dusty road, his eyes suddenly caught sight of a young woman. It was Grace. She was returning from the stream, balancing a bucket of water on her head. The morning sun shone on her face, and even with her simple wrapper and bare feet, she looked like a shining star. Her calm steps and dignity carried a beauty that money could never buy. Stephen slowed his car, lowered the window glass, and called out with a smile, "Hello, beautiful young lady. Can I help you?" But Grace kept her eyes straight. She walked on in silence as though she never heard him. Stephen frowned. He was not used to being ignored. He called again, louder this time. "Hey, I am talking to you. Don't you hear me?" Still Grace gave no answer. She moved quietly, her steps steady, her eyes fixed on her road. Surprised, Stephen drove slowly beside her, his car following her steps. "I am Stephen." Grace's lips pressed together. She did not stop. She did not even turn her head. She walked straight until she reached the compound where she lived. Then, without looking back, she opened the gate and entered inside. Stephen sat there in his car, stunned. His heart burned. No one had ever rejected him like this. Women in the city threw themselves at his feet. Even rich men bowed before his wealth. But here in this small village, a simple girl had dared to ignore him. He smiled bitterly, turned his car around, and sped back to the construction site. But no matter how hard he tried to forget, the image of Grace's face refused to leave his mind. The game had just begun, he muttered. The very next day, Grace's mother called. "My daughter," she said, "take this basket and go to the market. Buy food for the evening meal. Your father will soon return and we must prepare dinner." "Yes, mother," Grace replied gently. Picking up the basket, she walked down the narrow village path that led to the market. As she walked, she suddenly noticed a car approaching from a distance. Her heart skipped. It was him, the rich stranger, the man who followed her from the stream the day before. Grace's first thought was to hide, but it was already too late. Stephen had seen her. His eyes lit up with excitement as he pressed the pedal, his car moving closer. Grace hastened her steps. "I must not waste time," she said in her heart. "My mother is waiting. I must return quickly to prepare dinner." But Stephen was not ready to let her go. He drove closer and closer. Grace kept walking, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. She refused to look at him, but after some distance, she grew tired of being followed. She stopped, not because she wanted to, but because she needed peace. Stephen quickly stepped out of his car. He walked towards her with a smile, stretching out his hand. "I am Stephen," he said softly. Grace looked at him briefly, her eyes calm but firm. "I am Grace," she replied. Stephen's smile widened. "Why have you been treating me this way? Can you just give me a chance? I only want to talk to you." Grace stood quietly, her eyes lowered, refusing to answer. Stephen took a deep breath. "Listen, Grace. I don't want you as a girlfriend. I want you as my wife. I am serious about you." The words hung in the air. Grace's heart trembled, but she kept silent. "Think about it," Stephen continued. "I mean no harm." After a long pause, Grace whispered, "All right, I have heard you, but I have nothing to say now." Stephen nodded. "Take your time. It's fine." Grace turned to continue her journey. But Stephen called again. "Please, Grace, where are you heading to?" "I am going to the market," she replied. Stephen's eyes brightened. "Okay, then allow me to drive you. At least it will make your journey easier." Grace shook her head firmly. "No, thank you." Stephen tried to insist. "Please just enter. I promise I mean well." But Grace tightened her grip on her basket. "I said, no, I will walk. Thank you." She stepped forward and continued on her way, her footsteps steady and strong. Stephen stood by his car, frustrated yet strangely drawn to her even more. He watched her walk away, wondering why this village girl was so different from all the women he had ever met. And in that moment, Stephen made a silent vow. This girl, I must be with her. But Grace's heart was set like stone. She walked on to the market. An hour later, Grace returned from the market, with her basket full of food items. She went into the kitchen, cooked the evening meal, and served her parents. Yet, even as she worked, she could not forget the man she had seen again that day. The way he dressed, his calm voice, and the gentle way he spoke to her, it all lingered in her heart. No one in the village had ever called her beautiful the way Stephen did. No man had ever spoken to her with such softness. Even though she had walked away from him, his words still echoed in her ears. As she sat quietly after the meal, Grace smiled to herself. "Maybe this man is different," she thought. "Despite the way I treated him, he still followed me. Could this be a chance to bring honor to my parent? Perhaps I should give him a try." But Grace kept these thoughts hidden in her heart. She did not share them with her mother because she wanted to take her time and study the man first to be sure about him before saying anything. Later that evening, she carried her bucket and walked down to the stream to fetch water. The evening breeze blew gently as she filled her container. On her way back, balancing the heavy bucket on her head, she suddenly noticed Stephen's car driving out of the village road. Her heart jumped. She quickly thought of turning another way, but it was too late. Stephen had already seen her. Excited, he stopped his car and hurried out. With quick steps, he came to her and gently lifted the bucket from her head, placing it on the ground. For the first time, Grace looked straight into his eyes. Her lips trembled as she spoke. "Please," she whispered, "do not hurt me. You are the first man I have ever allowed to come close to my life. If I give you a chance, please don't disappoint me." Stephen placed his hand on his chest. His face looked serious, his voice calm. Grace, I promise you, I will never hurt you. If only you give me a chance, I will love you. I will honor you. Grace stood silently, her heart beating fast. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hope. Stephen smiled and said, "When will you be free so I can take you out? I want to celebrate this new beginning with you. You are special, Grace." Grace lowered her eyes, thinking for a moment. Then she whispered, "I don't know yet. Maybe during our youth celebration in the village tomorrow. Then we can create a time to meet. Okay." Stephen's smile widened. "Okay," he said softly. Under the fading evening sun, they both agreed to meet the next day, and Stephen lifted up her bucket again, put it on her head, and she began going home. But this time, she carried more than just water. She carried a secret in her heart, the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. The next day, the long-awaited youth celebration arrived in Grace's village. It was a special day when parents allowed their children to gather, dance, sing, and enjoy themselves freely. The whole village looked forward to it, for it was a day of freedom and joy. Grace stood before her small mirror. She carefully wore her best clothes and tied her scarf neatly. Her beauty shone, simple but pure. She hugged her mother before leaving. "Mother, I will be back soon," Grace said. Her mother smiled warmly. "Go well, my daughter. Enjoy yourself." "Yes, mother," Grace replied softly and stepped out. At that same time, Stephen had already made his plan. He knew it was the youth celebration. He drove his black SUV to the very road where Grace normally passed. He parked quietly and waited, his eyes watching through the rearview mirror. A few minutes later, Grace appeared, walking down the village street with her small handbag. From afar, she noticed the black SUV. Her heart skipped. She knew it was Stephen. For a brief moment, a smile touched her lips, but she quickly controlled herself and walked fast. Stephen sat inside the car, his eyes brightening the moment he saw her. He quickly started the engine and drove towards her. Within a minute, he caught up with her. He stopped the car, stepped out, and walked quickly to her. Without hesitation, he hugged her tightly, a wide smile on his face. "You look so beautiful, Grace," he said softly. Grace's cheeks turned warm. "Thank you, Mr. Stephen," she replied. Her voice trembled as she continued. "I feel so scared, but I want to believe you are a good man, just as you always say. You are the first man I have ever hugged in my life. Please don't let me down. Anytime I see your car or see you, my heart beats fast. I don't know if it is fear or love, but I believe I am safe with you." Stephen touched his chest and nodded. "Yes, of course, Grace. You are very safe with me." Grace smiled softly and hugged him again. Then she lifted her eyes and looked straight into his. "But if you really mean it, you must meet my parents." Stephen smiled, with confidence. "That is not a problem. I will create time to visit your parents. I give you my word." Grace's heart softened. At last, she trusted him. She hugged him tightly, holding on with innocent hope. Stephen gently led her to his car. "Come, let me drive you," he said. And from there, under the bright village sun, Stephen drove away with Grace, the young woman who believed she was safe in his hands, not knowing that danger was waiting on the road ahead. A few minutes later, as they drove down the village road, Stephen suddenly slowed the car and stopped in front of a house. Grace looked at him with surprise. Her heart skipped as she asked softly, "Stephen, why are we stopping here?" Stephen gave her a gentle smile and said, "This is the house the king provided for me to stay in while I am in the village to work on his son's building project." He explained calmly, "For the sake of transparency, I thought it would be good for you to know where I stay." He paused, then leaned closer, his voice smooth. "And besides, I want us to celebrate this new beginning. Let's go inside and take a cup of juice together. Let us toast to our future." His tone was calm, almost romantic. Grace's innocent heart trusted him. She nodded slowly, not knowing this moment would mark the beginning of her deepest sorrow. Stephen parked the car, came down quickly, and opened the door for her. Hand in hand, they walked into the apartment. Inside, Grace sat down on the couch, her eyes looking around the room with quiet curiosity. But what she did not know was that Stephen had already made a secret plan. Before leaving the house to bring her, He had prepared juice in the fridge, already mixed with a sleeping substance. Stephen walked to the fridge and brought out an unopened carton of juice with 2 glasses. With a smile, he poured the juice into Grace's cup after opening it and held it out to her. "Here is your juice, my love," he said softly. Grace accepted it. She had no reason to doubt him. She trusted every word he had spoken, every promise he had made. She lifted the glass and drank, her heart filled with hope and love. But little did she know, the man she trusted was about to betray her. As they sat together, Stephen began to explain. "You see, Grace, the king called me here to build a mansion for his son. That is why I came to your village. My workers are already on site. But today is not about work. Today is about you. You are special to me, Grace. I want us to build something strong together." Grace lowered her head shyly, her heart beating fast. But as she tried to smile, her hands suddenly trembled. Her head grew heavy. "Stephen, I don't feel well," she whispered weakly. Stephen rushed to her side, pretending to care. He touched her arm gently and said, "You're just tired, my love. Don't worry, just rest for a while." Her eyes grew heavier. Her body weakened as the drug spread through her veins. Slowly, Grace drifted into sleep on the couch, believing Stephen would keep her safe. But Stephen's heart was dark. When he saw she was unconscious, he carried her to the bed, and in that moment of weakness, he betrayed her. Hours later, Grace stirred. Her head pounded. Her body felt strange. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered, How did I get to the bed?" Her voice shook as she slightly opened the edge of the blanket. Her eyes widened in horror. Tears filled her eyes as her chest tightened. She realized Stephen had done something terrible while she was helped. No, Stephen. What have you done to me?" she cried bitterly, her tears flowing freely. The evening sun streamed through the window, but Grace's world had turned to darkness. Her trust, her innocence, her peace, all were destroyed. Stephen stood by the table, holding a large envelope. Inside was his business card and some money. He placed it near her and said coldly, "Use this to take care of yourself. I am sorry." Grace lifted her tearful eyes, her voice shaking with anger. "Is this what you take me for? Money? Stephen, I will never forgive you." But Stephen said nothing. He turned and walked out, leaving Grace broken. Moments later, Grace walked slowly back home, tears streaming down her face. She hid the envelope in her handbag, bitter and ashamed. Her heart whispered, "My spirit warned me. I should have listened." At that moment, she knew the truth. Stephen never loved her, but she could not tell her mother. She carried her pain in silence. 4 weeks later, Grace sat alone in her room, holding her stomach. Her face was pale and her eyes were full of fear. She whispered to herself, "Oh Lord, I have missed my monthly time. I hope it is not what I am thinking." The thought troubled her so much that the next morning she made up her mind to check on Stephen at the place where he had once taken her. She walked there with trembling steps. But when she arrived, Stephen was not around. The neighbors told her he had left days ago. Grace's heart sank. She turned back home, sadness written all over her face. 2 weeks later, early in the morning, Grace tried to step outside to fetch water. Suddenly, she bent over, holding her stomach. She felt sick and weak. At that moment, her mother walked past and looked at her closely. "Grace, are you all right?" her mother asked with concern. Grace forced a smile and said, "Yes, mother, I am fine." But the moment her mother walked far away, Grace broke down in tears. She sat on the floor, holding her head. "What is wrong with me?" she whispered bitterly. A few minutes later, she picked up her bucket and went to the stream. She sat quietly on a stone, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Lord, forgive me," she cried softly. "Stephen never loved me. What have I done to myself?" Meanwhile, back at home, her mother went into Grace's room to tidy up. As she folded her daughter's clothes, something fell from the wardrobe. It was a brown envelope. Curious, she opened it. Inside, she found some money and a business card with Stephen's name boldly written on it. Her eyes widened in shock. She sat down heavily on the bed, her hands shaking. "What is my daughter hiding from me?" she whispered. When Grace returned from the stream, her mother was waiting for her at the door, her eyes sharp with questions. "Grace, her mother asked softly but firmly. What are you hiding from me? Grace froze. Before she could answer, she dropped her bucket, ran to a corner of the house, and began to vomit. Her mother rushed to her, her voice trembling. Grace, tell me the truth. Are you pregnant? At that moment, Grace fell to her knees, crying bitterly. Mother, I am sorry. I was deceived by a man I trusted. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Deceived? She whispered. Yes, Mama, Grace sobbed. He promised to marry me, but he tricked me. He gave me a drink that made me weak. And when I woke up, everything had changed. I am so sorry. Her mother knelt beside her, her heart breaking. Oh, Grace, why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep this from me? I was afraid. Grace wept. I thought you would hate me. That afternoon, she took Grace to the small clinic in their village. The doctor examined her carefully. After a few minutes, he sighed and looked at Grace's mother. Madam, the doctor said gently, your daughter is pregnant. Grace covered her face with her hands, crying uncontrollably. Her mother held her, her heart torn apart, knowing their lives would never remain the same again. That night, when Grace's father returned from work, the house was quiet. After dinner, her mother sat beside him, her hands shaking. She looked into his eyes and whispered, My husband, our daughter, Grace, she is pregnant. The moment her father heard those words, his eyes widened in shock. He turned sharply to Grace, his face burning with anger. What am I hearing? He thundered. You are pregnant? Grace, for who? Grace trembled. Her lips quivered. Her eyes filled with tears. She fell to her knees. Father, I was wheezed, she stammered. A man promised to marry me. I believed him. Who was the man? Her father shouted. His fists clenched. Tell me now. Grace's voice broke. Stephen, she whispered. The engineer. The one who was contracted to build the prince's house. Her father's eyes widened. His face hardened with fury. Stephen, he repeated. A stranger. Grace wept bitterly. He gave me a drink that had something inside. I didn't know. He took advantage of me while I was helpless. Please, Father. Forgive me. Her father stood up in anger, his voice shaking the house. Grace, you have brought shame to my name. I give you only 2 market days. Bring this man here, or else pack your things and leave my house. No, Father, please, Grace cried, stretching her hands toward him. Where will I go? Don't send me away. But her father turned his back and walked into his room, slamming the door. Grace fell flat on the floor, wailing. What have I done to myself? My father doesn't want to see me. She remembered her mother's warnings. Never trust any man. But it was too late. That night, she sat alone in her room, thinking. Then she remembered the envelope Stephen had once given her. She had never opened it. With shaky hands, she opened her wardrobe and pulled it out. Inside, she found a bundle of money, 200,000 naira, and his business card. Her eyes widened in shock. So this is what I have been keeping all this while, she whispered through her tears. She clutched the money to her chest. Maybe this can help me find him in the city. My father has given me only 2 days and I can't even find Stephen here. Oh, Lord, what will I do? Her heart was heavy with bitterness. That night, she made a decision to go in search of Stephen. The next morning, while the village still slept, Grace quietly packed her bag. She looked around her room one last time, tears streaming down her face. Goodbye, Mother. Forgive me, she whispered. Then she slipped out of the house. At the market park, she boarded a bus heading to Lagos. Hours later, when her mother went to check Grace's room, she called her name, but found the bed empty. At first, she thought Grace had gone to the stream, so she waited. But Grace never returned. Her heart began to beat fast. She ran to her husband. My husband, Grace is not in her room. At first, I thought she went to the stream, but she is not there. I checked again, and her clothes are gone. Her husband stood frozen, his face pale. For a moment, he said nothing. Oh my goodness, her mother cried, falling to her knees. Where could she have gone? Her father finally spoke, his voice heavy. She has chosen her path. Let her go. But deep inside, even as he tried to be strong, his heart was breaking. And so Grace left her home behind, walking into an uncertain future, carrying only her tears, her shame, and the envelope that held both money and pain. By 8:00 p.m., Grace arrived in Lagos. With her small bag on her head, she stood at the noisy bus station, staring around the strange city. Cars honked, traders shouted, and the streets were full of people. For the first time in her life, she felt truly lost. Her stomach growled. Hunger struck her hard. Slowly, she walked through the busy street, looking for food. At last, she saw a small roadside food seller, with a wooden table and a dim lamp. "Good evening, ma," Grace said softly, placing her bag on the ground. "Please give me some rice." The woman smiled kindly. "How much rice do you want to buy, my daughter?" Grace opened her small handbag, her hands shaking. She paid and collected a plate of rice. Quietly, she sat on a bench, eating slowly, as tears filled her eyes. She thought of her mother and father, and wondered if they had noticed she was gone. After eating, she wiped her face and looked at the woman. She brought out the business card Stephen had given her. With hope in her eyes, she asked, "Please, ma, do you know this address?" The woman took the card, looked at it carefully, and nodded. "Yes, I know the place. It is not far from here. Enter a taxi, and they will drop you there." Grace's heart leapt. She smiled faintly. "Thank you, ma. Thank you so much." She waved down a taxi, entered, and showed the driver the card. The man nodded and said, "I know the place." Grace clutched her bag tightly, her heart filled with mixed feelings, fear and hope. When the taxi arrived, it was already late in the night. She stood in front of a big gate, taller than anything she had seen before. With trembling hands, she knocked. Its security guard opened the gate halfway. He looked at her from head to toe, suspicious. "Who are you looking for? And what is your name?" Grace swallowed hard. "I am Grace. I come from Ugato village. Please, I am looking for Stephen." The guard raised his brows. "Wait here," he said, shutting the gate. And he went inside the mansion. The guard approached Stephen, who was seated at the dining table with a glass of wine. "Sir, a young lady is at the gate," he said. "She says her name is Grace. She comes from Ugato village." Stephen froze for a moment. Then his face twisted in anger. "Grace from Ugato village," he repeated. "Yes, sir," the guard replied. Stephen's eyes turned cold. "I don't know anyone called Grace. And listen carefully. If you let any stranger in here, you'll lose your job." The guard nodded and returned to the gate. He opened it slightly, his face hard. "My boss said he doesn't know you. Leave now, before I chase you out." Grace's eyes widened in shock. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Tell him, it's Grace. He knows me. Please, just tell him again." But the guard shouted, "I said leave now." He slammed the gate shut and locked it. Grace stood there, frozen. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, "Oh God, even Stephen has rejected me." She turned slowly, her feet weak, her chest heavy. She walked back down the quiet Lagos street, not knowing where to go. After a few minutes, she waved down another taxi and told the driver to take her back to the place where she had earlier bought food. When she arrived, the street was quiet. Beside the woman's shop was an empty space, dark and cold. Grace sat down there, hugging her bag tight. She thought about how Stephen once spoke to her, with sweet words, how he promised to love her forever. "All were lies," she whispered, as tears poured down her face. Slowly her body grew weak. Her tears dried on her cheeks as she leaned against the wall. And in that cold, lonely street of Lagos, Grace drifted into sleep, homeless, rejected, and broken. An hour later, the food seller finished serving her last customer and began to close her shop. As she turned to pack her things, her eyes caught sight of someone lying on the cold floor in front of a locked shop nearby. She stepped closer, shocked. "Who is this girl?" she thought. "Does this mean she has no parents? No place to stay?" The woman's heart grew heavy. She had not realized it was the same young lady who had earlier come to her, asking for Stephen's address. Quietly, she walked closer. She bent down and tapped the girl gently. "Hello, young lady," she said softly. Grace stirred, Opening her eyes slowly, she jumped up in fear, her heart beating fast. She thought she had done something wrong. The woman raised her hand calmly. Stay calm, my daughter. But tell me, what are you doing here? Why are you sleeping in this open place? Don't you know it is very dangerous? Grace lowered her head ashamed. With a broken voice, she replied, My name is Grace. I come from Agato village. I was rejected by a man who promised to marry me. Now I have no place to go. That is why I slept here. I plan to find another way tomorrow. The moment the woman heard Grace's trembling voice, her heart was touched. She bent down and lifted Grace by the hand. Don't worry, my daughter, the woman said gently. Stand up. Take your bag. Come with me. You cannot sleep here tonight. Grace looked up surprised. You want to help me? She asked, her voice still shaking. Yes, my daughter, the woman replied firmly. You are not safe here. Come, let's go home. Slowly, Grace stood, her tears flowing again. This time not from pain, but from relief. That night, she found favor in the eyes of a stranger. But at that same hour, far away, in a mansion, Stephen sat on his bed, restless. The security guard's words kept ringing in his ears. A young lady says her name is Grace. She comes from Ugato village. Stephen leaned back, staring at the ceiling. What is she doing here? How did she even find my house? He muttered. He had forgotten that the envelope he gave her back in Ugato village contained both money and his business card. His chest tightened. His thoughts grew darker. He told himself, but I already gave her money. I owe her nothing more. But he didn't know their last meeting had not ended as he thought. He never realized that his actions had planted a seed. Still, his heart is hard. To Stephen, Grace was just a village girl who could be bought with cash. To him, everything was about money, but no matter how hard he tried to push it away, one name refused to leave his mind. Grace. Grace now lived with the kind woman who had taken her in on that painful night when she had no place to sleep. From that day on, the woman treated Grace like her own daughter. Every morning, Grace followed her to the small food shop where they sold rice, beans, and soup to workers and Legos. Grace helped wash plates, clean tables, and serve food to customers. Though her stomach was heavy with pregnancy, she worked with joy. At least now she had found shelter, kindness, and food to eat. One morning, as Grace bent to lift a pot of water, she suddenly placed her hand on her stomach and cried out in pain. The woman rushed to her side. My daughter, stop. You are already in your last month. You must not be doing heavy work again. Grace shook her head gently, trying to smile. Mama, please let me help you. I don't want to just sit at home. I feel safer here with you than staying alone in the house. The woman touched her shoulder and smiled softly. All right, my daughter, but you must be careful. I don't want anything to happen to you. Then she said, Tomorrow we must go to the hospital for a proper checkup. You need to be strong for the child you're carrying. From that day, Grace felt a peace she had not known for months. For the first time since Stephen betrayed her, she felt a mother's love again. No more crying at night. She finally had someone who cared for her. The next day, the old woman took Grace to the hospital. The doctor examined her and smiled. Your baby is healthy, the doctor said. You have only 1 month left before delivery. Grace breathed out in relief. She smiled for the first time in a long while. Thank you, Mama. Thank you for everything. When they returned home, both were happy. But later that night, as Grace lay in her bed, her thoughts drifted to her parents. She remembered her mother's kind face and her father's stern voice. Guilt swept over her heart. She whispered into the night, Mother, Father, forgive me. 1 month later, in the middle of the night, Grace woke up suddenly with sharp pains in her stomach. She clutched her belly and cried out, her voice trembling. The old woman rushed into the room and found Grace struggling to take a step, as she held her stomach and her waist, breathing hard. My daughter, what is it? She asked, fear filling her voice. Grace groaned, her eyes wide with tears. Mama, I think it's time. The pain is too much. Please help me. The woman's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay strong. She quickly tied a wrapper around her waist, then ran outside to get a taxi. Luckily, she found one. She came back inside holding Grace slowly and said, You will be fine. Then she helped her into the taxi. The taxi driver sped through the quiet night. Grace leaned on the old woman's shoulder, groaning in pain. When they reached the hospital, The nurses rushed out and carried Grace straight into the labor room. The old woman sat in the reception, waiting. A few minutes later, the cries of a newborn filled the hospital ward. Grace, weak but smiling, looked at the tiny life in her arms. A beautiful baby girl. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you, Lord. My child is here." Moments later, the old woman rushed into the room after hearing the news. The moment her eyes fell on the baby, her heart leapt with joy. She lifted her hands, clapped, and danced in the small space. With tears of happiness, she cried out, "God, I thank you. My daughter is safe, and this little angel has entered the world." Grace smiled weakly. "Mama, she is my happiness, because she has brought joy into my life," Grace said weakly, smiling at her baby. The woman touched her head gently and whispered, "My daughter, she will grow and bring even more light into your life." The days passed, and Grace recovered quickly. The old woman paid all the hospital bills, and soon mother and child were discharged. As Grace carried her baby home for the first time, peace filled their small house, and her heart overflowed with gratitude. A month later, Grace sat in the corner dressing her baby with small clothes the woman had bought. Her eyes shone with joy. The old woman noticed her smile and asked, "My daughter, what is making you so happy today?" Grace looked down at baby Sophia and said softly, "Mama, I want to write a letter to Stephen. He should know that I have given birth. In spite of what he did to me, this child is also his, and I think it is wise to let him know." The old woman nodded slowly. "You are wise, my daughter. A child should not grow up hidden. Let the father know the truth, even if he refuses to accept it." That evening, Grace took her pen and paper. With trembling hands, she wrote, "Stephen, I have given birth to your daughter. I am not writing to trouble you, but I thought you should know. She is healthy, and I pray one day you will see her." The next morning, Grace folded the letter neatly. She left Sophia behind with the old woman as she rushed quickly to deliver the letter to Stephen. When she arrived at the gate, she knocked. The security guard opened. Grace handed the letter to him quietly. "Please, sir, give this letter to Stephen. It is very important." The guard looked at her closely, remembering her face. "You again? The young lady from Yugato village?" "Yes," Grace said calmly. "Please, just give the letter to him." She walked away slowly, her heart beating fast. An hour later, Stephen stepped out of his house. The security guard walked up to him and said, "Sir, that same lady who once came here has left this letter for you." Stephen frowned, took the letter, and opened it. His eyes moved quickly across the words as he read. His face grew stiff. He whispered to himself, "A child, she says. She gave birth. No, no, this cannot be true." He folded the letter tightly in his hand, anger flashing in his eyes. "She wants to trap me. She wants to tie me down with a child. No." He stepped back into the house, breathing heavily. But even as he tried to deny it, his heart was not at peace. Grace's words echoed in his mind. "She gave birth. No, this can't be true," he whispered. Still, he refused to believe what he had read. Years passed, and Grace grew stronger with her little daughter, Sophia. The kind old woman who once sheltered them fell sick, and her children came one day to take her away for treatment. Before leaving, the old woman held Grace's hands and whispered, "Take care of yourself, my daughter. Take care of Sophia. You two are now my family." Tears filled Grace's eyes as she nodded. "Mama, I will never forget your kindness." After the old woman left, the small house where they all lived felt empty. Grace stood in the quiet room and whispered to herself, "God, help. I must now carry this burden alone." Every morning she continued selling food at the same small shop the old woman once ran. Business went well, and people liked her because of her humble smile. But every time she counted money at night, she remembered the woman who had saved her life, and her heart felt heavy. One afternoon, 10-year-old Sophia came home from school. She dropped her school bag and ran into her mother's arms at the roadside shop where she sold food. After eating, she looked at Grace and asked softly, "Mom, where's my dad? Grandma always said he traveled. Why hasn't he come back?" Grace froze, her hands trembling. Then she forced a small smile and said softly, "Don't worry, my daughter. I'll tell you everything later. For now, just focus on your studies." Years passed quickly. Grace's little baby girl, Sophia, grew into a bright and gentle child. She was kind like her mother and loved to help people. From a young age, Sophia always said, "Mom, one day I will be a doctor. I will treat people." Grace worked hard every day selling food at the shop the old woman left for them. She saved every little money she made to pay for Sophia's school fees. When Sophia got admission into the university, Grace cried tears of joy. She held her daughter's hands tightly. "Make me proud, my child," Grace said with tears in her eyes. Sophia smiled and wiped her mother's tears. "I promise, Mom. I will make you proud." Years later, Sophia graduated with first-class honors. She became a doctor in a reputable private hospital in Lagos. Everyone loved her because she was not only smart but also humble and kind to her patients. Meanwhile, Stephen's life took a bitter turn. Years after abandoning Grace and rejecting her child, he married a much younger woman, over 30 years his junior. She never loved her eyes were only on his wealth. For a while she acted like a devoted wife, but deep in her heart, she was only counting the benefits. When Stephen's health began to fail, and the doctors confirmed his kidney problems, fear crept into her mind. She knew the day would come when Stephen might ask her to make the ultimate sacrifice to donate a kidney. But sacrifice was never part of her plan. Instead, she quietly gathered what she could, taking money and valuables, and one morning she disappeared without a word. Stephen was left broke. The few friends he once trusted drifted away, unwilling to share in his pain. His mansion, once filled with noise and luxury, became silent and cold. The only thing he had left was his sickness. One morning, Stephen collapsed in his house. His gatekeeper rushed him to the hospital. After several tests, the doctors confirmed that his kidneys were failing. He needed a transplant. That same day, fate worked in a way no one could explain. The doctor assigned to attend to Stephen was none other than Sophia, the little daughter he had abandoned before she was even born. Wearing her white coat, Sophia walked into the hospital room with her file in her hand. She looked calm and confident. "Good afternoon, sir," she said gently. Stephen turned his head slowly. His eyes met hers and he froze. Something about her voice, her eyes, and her smile struck his heart like lightning. It reminded him of someone, the woman he had betrayed in the past. His lips trembled. He whispered, "What? What is your name?" Sophia gave a kind smile. "My name is Dr. Sophia." Stephen's heart pounded. His body shook. His lips trembled as he muttered, "Nice name." But deep inside, his soul was filled with fear. Could this young doctor be connected to his past? Meanwhile, as Sophia administered treatment to the man, her mind was restless. The name on his file troubled her deeply. It carried 3 names: Stephen, Jacob, Carlu. She froze for a moment because those were the exact names her mother had once mentioned when speaking of her father. Sophia whispered in her heart, "But Mom said my father passed away before I was born. Could this be the same person? Or maybe it is just a rare case of 2 people having the exact same name." That evening, after a long day at work, Sophia came home tired but happy to see her mother. As they sat at the dining table eating their meal, Sophia spoke in a casual tone. "Mom," she said, chewing slowly, "today at the hospital, we received a patient. His name is Stephen Jacob Koo." Grace's spoon dropped slightly, but she quickly picked it up and forced a small smile. "My daughter, Lagos is a very big city. Sometimes people carry the same name. It is just a rare case of 2 people having the same name." Sophia nodded, thinking nothing of it. "That's true, Mom. I didn't even imagine anything else. I just remembered you once mentioned the same name before. But since you told me my father is late, I didn't think too much about it." Grace's heart sank at those words, but she kept her face calm so Sophia would not suspect anything. She laughed lightly and said, "Yes, my child. Don't worry yourself." They finished eating and Sophia went to her room to rest. But that night, Grace could not sleep. She turned from one side of the bed to the other, her heart heavy with fear. She whispered to herself, "What if it is him? What if the man my daughter saw today is truly Stephen?" Memories rushed back. How Stephen had ruined her youth, how he abandoned her, and how she had raised Sophia alone with tears and struggle. Grace pressed her hand on her chest and sighed deeply. "I lied to my daughter," she thought. "I told her father was no more because I wanted her to forget him. I wanted to protect her from the pain of knowing the man who rejected us. He does not deserve her love. But What if life is bringing them together again? Grace stared at the ceiling, her eyes wet with tears. Lagos is a city of millions, she said softly. I always told myself there is no way they would meet, but now I am no longer sure. That night, she prayed in silence, her heart torn between fear and the truth she had hidden for so many years. The next morning, Sophia went to check on her patient, Mr. Stephen Jacob Kalu. His health was failing fast, his eyes were weak, and his body had grown thin. Sophia sat gently by his bed and spoke in a calm but firm voice. Sir, the truth is clear. Your kidneys are failing. To survive, you need someone willing to donate a kidney. Please. Is there anyone? Maybe a family member you can call. Stephen shook his head slowly. His lips trembled as he spoke. I have no one. I was the only child of my parents, and they have long gone. My wife left me the moment she found out I was seriously sick. She said she could not stay with a man who had no strength left. And friends, the few I had, they all disappeared when they learned about the nature of my illness. Then he added with a weak smile. I suppose they knew I was going to need a donor at some point, so they left beforehand. His eyes filled with tears as he looked at Sophia. My dear, please don't worry about me. I have accepted my fate. I am in my late 50s. If it is time, then let it be. My only regret is that I never had a child to carry my name. I chased wealth. I thought money was all I needed. But now I see my father would be so disappointed in me, even in his grave. Tears slid down the side of his. Sophia's heart broke as she listened, but as a doctor, she forced herself to stay strong, holding her tears inside. Sir, please stay strong. Miracles can happen, she said softly. As she stood to leave, she opened the door only to find her mother standing right in front of it. Startled, Sophia frowned. Mom, what are you doing here? You didn't tell me you were coming to the hospital. How did you even get here? Grace stepped forward, her eyes restless. I told the receptionist it was an emergency, she replied quickly, brushing past her daughter. Her heart had not rested since Sophia mentioned the name yesterday. She had to see with her own eyes. The moment Grace stepped inside, her eyes met Stephen's. Both froze, their mouths opened at the same time, and with shaky voices, they whispered each other's names. Stephen? Grace breathed. Grace? Stephen croaked, his voice weak. Sophia's eyes darted between them in shock. Wait, you both know each other? She asked, her voice trembling. There was silence for a few seconds. Grace's chest rose and fell as tears welled in her eyes. Sophia pressed on, her voice sharp with confusion. Mom, I hope it's not what I'm thinking. Grace lowered her head and nodded slowly, tears rolling down her face. Yes, my daughter. This is the man I once told you about. The man who ruined my life. Sophia's voice cracked. But Mom, you told me. You told me he was. Grace cut her off, her voice breaking. I lied. I wanted to protect you from this wicked man, who abandoned me, who left me to suffer while carrying you in my womb. Sophia's mouth fell open, her hands trembling. She looked at Stephen, then back at her mother. Stephen could not hold back his tears. They streamed down both sides of his face as he lay helpless on the hospital bed, unable to move. Grace's voice shook with pain and anger. Just look at yourself. Look at how you are lying there like a piece of paper. The almighty Stephen, the man who thought money could buy everything. Where is your power now? Where are your riches now? Her words cut like a knife. Unable to stay another moment, Grace turned quickly and rushed out of the hospital room, tears flooding her eyes. The wound she thought had healed for years had been ripped open again. Sophia stood frozen, her mind in turmoil. She looked at her patient, the man she had been treating with care, and realized he was the man who abandoned her mother, the same man she had been told was long gone. Her heart pounded, torn between duty as a doctor and pain as a daughter. That evening, after they returned home, Grace sat quietly in the living room, her eyes red from crying. The weight of the day pressed heavily on her. Sophia came out from her room and sat close to her mother. Mom, Sophia said softly, I know why you hid the truth. You wanted to protect me. I understand the pain you went through, but telling me that my father was long gone, that was too much. Grace lowered her head in shame, her hands trembling. My daughter, I am sorry. I thought it was the best way to save you from ever asking about him. I was wrong. Sophia gently took her mother's hands and held them tightly. Mom, listen to me. There is nothing you can do in this life that will ever make me angry with you. Your sacrifices have outweighed any mistake. You gave up your youth for me. You carried me when no one stood by you. You are my hero, Mom. Tears rolled down Grace's legs, but this time they were mixed with relief. She smiled faintly through her tears. My daughter, you speak with so much love. But there is one more truth I have kept from you, and I think it is time you know. Sophia's heart skipped. What is it, Mom? She asked quickly. Grace sighed deeply, her voice breaking as she spoke. You have grandparents, your mother's parents. They are still alive, but far away in the village. I left them years ago after my father gave me an ultimatum, he said. I must bring the man who made me pregnant within 2 market days, or else leave his house forever. I searched for Stephen, but when he rejected me and shut his doors, I could not go back. I was ashamed. I was afraid. So, I stayed back in Lagos. That was how I met the old woman who took me in, and later became like a mother to both of us. Sophia's eyes widened as she listened. Her voice shook. So, Mom, all these years I had grandparents and I didn't know. Grace nodded slowly. Yes. My daughter, I should have told you, but I felt I had lost the right to go back. I carried my pain in silence. Sophia held her mother tightly and whispered, Mom, you have carried too much alone. I am grown now. Whatever secrets remain, we will face them together. Grace closed her eyes and leaned against her daughter. For the first time in years, she felt a small weight lift from her heart. But as Sophia lay down later that night, her mind was troubled. So much has been revealed in just one day about my father, about my grandparents. What else don't I know? She whispered to herself. The silence of the night was heavy, and both mother and daughter knew their story was far from over. The next morning, Stephen sat weakly in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Now that he had discovered he truly had a daughter, his heart burned with regret. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone and called his lawyer. Prepare a document for me, Stephen said softly. His voice weak. Bring it here for me, to sign. No one must know the content. Only you and I. The lawyer nodded on the other end of the line. A few days later, he came to the hospital with a brown envelope. Stephen signed the paper slowly, his eyes wet with tears. What was written inside remained a secret, locked between him and his lawyer. Meanwhile, Sophia could not rest. She had requested the hospital management to assign another doctor to Stephen. She wanted to avoid him. She wanted to block every memory of his betrayal. Yet, even as she tried to stay far, her mind refused to let him go. In her heart, there was a picture she longed for. A complete family, a mother, a father, and even the grandparents she had just discovered. 2 weeks passed. Stephen's health grew worse. His body was weak, his skin pale, his eyes dim. Grace and Sophia had not gone to see him since their last encounter. Their anger had subsided, but the wound in their hearts still bled quietly. One quiet evening after Sophia returned home from work, she walked into the small living room. Grace was sewing by the table. Sophia sat beside her, silent for a moment. Then she spoke with a trembling voice. Mom, I have thought deeply about this. I can't sleep at night, and I've decided that I want to do it. Grace looked up sharply. Her hands froze. Do what? She asked, her voice uncertain. Sophia swallowed hard, tears filling her eyes. To donate my kidney to him. Grace jumped to her feet in shock. Over my dead body, she cried, her voice breaking. Never. I will never allow that. You want to share your life 50-50 with a man who never cared about you? The same man who abandoned me in shame. No, I will not watch you do this. She paced the floor, crying and yelling, her wrapper shaking as she walked. Mom, please, Sophia pleaded, standing to hold her. Stop, we don't have to be like him. If we let him die, then we are no better than him. Grace pulled her hand away, tears streaming down her cheeks. So Stephen has eaten his cake and now he still gets to have it? After all the pain, after all the shame. God, is this fair? Sophia's voice shook, but she stood firm. Mom, It is not about him. It is about us. It is about who we are. I cannot carry hatred in my heart. I want to save him, not because he deserves it, but because I want to prove that love is stronger than hate. Grace broke down, covering her face with both hands. She cried so bitterly that her voice echoed in the room. Sophia held her gently, whispering, "Mom, please let me do this. I want to save him." The room was filled with tears and silence. Grace's heart battled with pain and fear, while Sophia's heart battled with duty and love. That night, no one in the house slept. The next day, Mr. Stephen was informed that one of the doctors had offered to donate a kidney to save his life. The doctor's name was Sophia. The moment Stephen heard it, his body shook, his eyes filled with tears. He knew without being told it was her, his daughter, the same child he had rejected before she was even born. The child he never carried, never fed, never raised. Even though he had all the wealth in the world, he covered his face with his hands and wept like a child. "Oh God," he cried. "How can she be the one to save me? I don't deserve this." His voice broke into sobs. He begged the nurse, "Please call her for me. I must see her." But Sophia refused. Her answer was firm. "I am not doing this because of him. I am doing this because I refuse to let hate live inside me. I will not see him." A date was set for the surgery. On the morning of the operation, Grace insisted she would follow her daughter. She could not sit at home and wait. "I want to be there, my daughter," she said. "I want to know you are safe." Sophia agreed, and together they left for the hospital. When they arrived, the atmosphere was strange. People stood with their arms folded, their faces heavy. The hallway was too quiet. Nurses and doctors moved slowly, avoiding eye contact. Grace and Sophia exchanged worried glances. Something was wrong. Sophia did not waste a second. She ran down the hall and entered the room where Stephen had been admitted. The bed was empty. Her heart raced. She turned quickly and rushed to the doctor's office. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The doctor stood up slowly, his face downcast. "I am sorry, Dr. Sophia. We lost him this morning." Sophia's whole body went weak. Her head felt heavy. For a moment, no word came out of her mouth. She walked back slowly, step by step, until she reached her mother. Grace stood up quickly. "My daughter, what happened? Where is he?" Sophia's lips trembled as her eyes filled with tears. "At last," she whispered. "He's gone, Mom. He is gone." Both mother and daughter held each other and cried in the hospital corridor. Grace stroked Sophia's back gently and said, "It's all right, my daughter. You tried your best. You were ready to give him life. Even when he gave us nothing, God has seen your heart." Sophia cried louder in her mother's arms. She did not know why her tears flowed so heavily. Was it pain? Was it pity? Or was it the deep emptiness of never having the chance to use the word father to the man who now lays silent forever? 2 weeks after the passing of Stephen, Sophia received a call from a man who introduced himself as Stephen's lawyer. His voice was calm but serious. "Dr. Sophia," he said, "before Mr. Stephen died, he signed some documents. He asked me to deliver this message to you and your mother. He willed everything he owned to the both of you. His companies, his houses, his wealth, everything now belongs to you and your mother." Sophia froze. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice trembling. The lawyer repeated, "All his properties, all his businesses now belong to you and your mother. That was his last wish." Sophia dropped the phone and covered her face with her hands. "Mom," she whispered, "after all the pain, after all the rejection, he still left everything to us." Grace stood quietly, her eyes wet. "Life has a way of turning things around, my daughter. But remember, no amount of money can replace the years of pain. We will use this gift wisely." Their lives changed forever. From that day, they no longer struggled. Though Sophia was already doing well as a doctor, it was nothing compared to the wealth of a billionaire. But more than the wealth, what touched Sophia the most was the lesson. Pain can turn to blessing in unexpected ways. Not long after, Grace decided it was time to return to the village. Sophia agreed, and together they traveled back home to see Grace's parents. When they arrived, the old couple could hardly believe their eyes. Grace's mother embraced her tightly, crying. Grace broke down in tears. "Father, I'm sorry I left without telling you. I was young and afraid, but God kept me. And this is my daughter, Dr. Sophie. The child I once thought would bring me shame has become my greatest pride. Her father shook his head slowly. No, my daughter. It is I who should be sorry. I was too hard on you. I let my anger blind me. Please forgive me. Grace held his hands and wept. I forgave you long ago, Father. All I ever wanted was your love. Then he turned to Sophia and said with trembling lips, So you are now a doctor. The very dream I once wished for, Grace. I now see it in you, my granddaughter. You have brought honor to this family. That day, the family ate together, laughed together, and cried together. Grace felt a weight lift from her heart. For the first time in many years, she felt whole again. As the sun set over the quiet village, Sophia looked at her mother and grandparents and said softly, This is what a family should be, not built on money, but on love and forgiveness. Grace smiled, her tears shining in the fading light. And so the story ended, not with bitterness but with healing. The daughter once abandoned became the savior. The mother once rejected found peace, and the family once broken was made whole again. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that wealth, pride, and power may appear mighty, but they can never take the place of love, truth, and family. Stephen turned his back on Grace and their child out of pride. Yet, in the end, it was that very child who held the key to his survival. Life teaches us that every choice we make bears fruit, and the seeds we plant today determine the harvest we reap tomorrow. Now tell me, my dear viewers, if you were in Sophia's place, would you have helped the father who once abandoned you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. A new and inspiring story will be uploaded in just a few days, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be the first to watch it. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share it with your friends so they too can take away its lesson. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me.